Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to a very important visit in Pakistan. The Iranian president and his spouse have both arrived in Pakistan along with a huge number of delegation staff, including businessmen and other important ministers of Iran. This is important not only in terms of the cooperation and historical relationship between both the countries, but also in terms of what lies ahead and the mutual goals that both countries have, particularly in terms of issues such as Islamophobia, terrorism, and others. There's also, of course, a lot of concern with regards to moving forward in terms of trade relationship and making sure that the economies of the both countries progress. This visit is, of course, going to be going to span over 3 days, with, of course, starting from today and moving on till the 24th, and in multiple cities of the country as well, meeting, of course, senior leadership in Pakistan. And this is important, particularly in terms of how we want to proceed forward in a number of areas to enhance regional cooperation and how historically both the countries can take forward this relationship and strengthen it in the future. So we're going to be taking a look at what is planned as part of this visit and what is the hope that we will be able to move forward from this, and what exactly will be the takeaways for both the countries and their relationship moving forward. Our next segment is going to be taking a look at what is happening in India with regards to, of course, the elections. We've seen a number of issues arise, a number of discussions, particularly in terms of the Congress and the opposition alliance, and of course the BJP party, which is all set to win a third term in office according to various reports who already assumed the results. We're going to be also taking a look at the sense at which we've seen the BJP build a lot of its narrative previously as well, and that, of course, is Hindu nationalism and talking about the communal issues and building on those cracks in India's society and using them for their own favor in the elections. And an incident within this regard, of course, is with regards to the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, who in a recent address has also talked about and referred to the Muslims of India and have passed comments which contribute to hate speech and inciting violence. And the Congress party has talked about how strict action is going to be taken against this, and have also reported this particular case. But of course, as previously also we've seen, a lot of the decisions and actions that have been taken by the BJP and now, of course, the Prime Minister who's involved in this particular incident have not come to any consequence and have been done with impunity. So we're going to be taking a look at what will be the issue with regards to this particular incident as well, and how we're going to be seeing the unfolding of the election campaign on both sides, and how exactly will then the factors involving communal rights and communal violence in India will play about in the speeches of the various leaders as well. That's going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, I've been joined in the studios by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online for our first segment by Mr. Jauhar Saleem, who's former Foreign Secretary and President, Institute of Regional Studies. Thank you very much, Jauhar, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Firstly, let me start with your comments regarding the Iranian president's visit. And if I'm not wrong, this is the first time that we're seeing this visit since 2017. And of course, this relationship is something that Pakistan has enjoyed for quite some time. We have historical ties with Iran. But considering this visit in today's day and age, what exactly do you hope that will come out of it? And how important do you think is this particular delegation's visit?
Yes, thank you. It's a very important visit after the February 8 elections and setting up of this current government. This is the first major visit that we're having in terms of head of state visiting Pakistan, and that too for one of the major neighboring countries, and a country with which Pakistan has had long-standing ties of cordiality and cooperation anchored on religion and culture and history, and there's so many commonalities between the two countries. The two countries also enjoy a sizable trade of about $2 billion, and there are plans to enhance and multiply this trade, for which there is great potential existing. Then again, the two countries, they have a history of cooperation within the international fora to promote international peace and development. Within that realm, Pakistan and Iran, they've had commonalities of ideas and perceptions. The visit program that we see, the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, he met with the President, Prime Minister, and of course in the visit program, the meetings with the Chairman Senate, Speaker National Assembly. And besides that, he would be visiting also Lahore and Karachi, where he would have meetings and with the governors and chief ministers they would be calling upon him, and they would be hosting um, receptions and dinners for him. So this is a full-fledged program. We've seen in the past, these type of visits. Uh, the Turkish presidents, when they used to come to Pakistan or other close friends of Pakistan, they would go not be beyond Islamabad. They would always visit Lahore and Karachi and some other cities as well sometimes. So I think this clearly demonstrates that the two countries are very keen to build upon the existing cooperation, number one. Number two, on the issues where they've had some sort of, in recent times, some difference of perceptions perhaps, but the objective has been common. That is an area where the two countries have been facing terrorism, and they want to cooperate in this particular area. And in recent times, there have been a lot of dialogues and mechanisms for that. And this very important visit would build upon that, because the Iranian president, is accompanied by a full-fledged team. So there will be consultations at the top level, and then the political levels, varying political levels, and then the technical and experts levels. The areas of possible cooperation include, of course, one is the expansion of trade, as it has been already reiterated by those two sides, that they would want to increase this trade, the existing trade, significantly, and perhaps multiply it in the coming years. Then there's the area of energy cooperation. There's the area of connectivity within the field of agriculture. There are lots of possibilities as well, and there are other areas as well where the two countries. These are two very important Muslim countries, very important regional countries, and Pakistan has this policy now, um, whereby there's a particular focus on geoeconomics, where there's a particular focus on promoting regional cooperation, on promoting regional understanding. And this visit is another link in that policy, and an important one for that. And in recent times, we have seen that many developments have taken place in the world, in the Middle East and other regions, and where the countries, important countries such as Pakistan and Iran, they need to consult each other. Um, Pakistan has always called upon for the need of, wherever there have been conflicts, for the need of de-escalation and restraint, and for the need of building peace and development, um, instead of um, any conflicts. In fact, Pakistan
Right.
has always called.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Saab, there's also, of course, with regards to what you're saying in terms of regional connectivity and cooperation, a lot of concerns that, of course, are also shared by both the countries. And, of course, those are also areas that both the countries can work together. I also want your understanding in terms of what this delegation also hopes to achieve from Pakistan. And I know a number of areas that you pointed out may be part of the mutual goals that both countries have, but there are things, of course, that we're looking for. But what really is Iran looking forward in terms of strengthening its relationship with Pakistan, and which areas will be the major factors that they'd want to build on?
I think there's a commonality of perception between the both countries. The areas of trade is a huge area. Within the area of trade, there could be so many segments, so many facets within the area of trade. Uh, then, as I mentioned, it's energy cooperation. It's a it's a vast area where there's so many possibilities. Then connectivity, because Pakistan is located at the confluence of three regions of West Asia, South Asia, and Middle East. So and we have we have invested huge amounts of capital in collaboration with China and on our own in trying to build the infrastructure for connectivity. So that is a very important agenda for Pakistan, and it's important for Iran as well. Connectivity is the key for cooperation. Then again, agriculture, for as I mentioned, um, again, there's so much to learn in terms of best practices by both the countries. The areas where Pakistan has done particularly well in recent years, and the other areas where Iran has contributed greatly within its own domain. So, so the possibilities are very many, and the important thing is whether the two countries have the keenness, whether the two countries have the will and the resolve to build upon the potential which is existing, to translate that potential into reality. And we see that there.
Right. Another important aspect is, of course, cooperation on issues of terrorism. And of course, this is something that Pakistan is fighting a lot against and has been for quite some time now. But there's obviously a lot of regional cooperation required on this front as well. But what exactly will that mean on ground? What sort of cooperation do you see that can possibly exist, especially when we talk about terrorism? Can that be on the field of more defense relationships or more intelligence sharing? What do you think can be done on that front?
Both the countries, Pakistan, as you know, has been at the forefront of the war against terror, and we've been, we have made immense sacrifices over the last 10, 15, 20 years, with tens of thousands of deaths and losses, material losses to the tune of $150 billion or more. The non-state actors in our region, which are involved in Pakistan, which are involved in Iran, which are involved in other countries as well. And it is a common thread. And sometimes these non-state actors, in terms of their activities, they can even create misunderstandings between friends. And that is why it is very important that there's cooperation, that there's understanding, there's a dialogue, there are different mechanisms whereby that fight, which is the fight of our two countries in this particular area, is against those non-state actors which are involved in terrorist activities in both the countries. And it doesn't matter which groups are those, but the important thing is that it's not just Iran, not just Pakistan, uh, but both the countries together have this resolve, not just on their own, but together as well, that they would not allow their soil to be used by any non-state actors, or whether, sort of, I mean, naturally, these non-state actors, they do not operate in terms of any state, with any state patronage, or in terms of any state um, consent, or, they operate on their own. But it's very important uh, to together fight these groups, and to ensure that these groups, and to eliminate their capacity and their capability to operate within any territory, whether it's Pakistan's soil or Iran's soil. And there are
Right,
different mechanisms, in
but
fact.
do we have that understanding on ground as well? And I understand these assurances are there, but is that something that we see on ground too?
Yeah, definitely. If you recall that some time ago, there were problems whereby these non-state actors in the two countries, they had created some misperceptions between the two countries, and following that, there was, like link. There were dialogues, and there was sort of, a great deal of interaction, whereby the two countries came up with preventative measures. It came up with a strategy as to how to defeat these groups, and how to um, fight these groups, to ensure that this type of instance does not happen again.
Right.
And I think that the most important thing here is the understanding and the will. And that is it, because once you have the will and you have an understanding with each other, then of course the rest of the things are basically, that is something that you need to do together. The mechanisms can be formed, ways and means can be found, and always sort of like technical intelligence sharing, for instance, is very much possible. And besides that, also information sharing. There's so many ways whereby countries can cooperate and collaborate.
Right. Right, absolutely. And Farrukh, of course, our relationship with different countries is very important, and we share historical ties with so many of them. But what makes Iran so special?
Right, Sana, before I actually talk about that, I wanted to actually express my regret regarding one opportunity cost. I was invited to a reception in the honor of Iranian president, but because I'm a working man and I have to do this job, it was simultaneous to this program, so I had to come
Hey,
here.
earlier you told us you chose us over them.
Farrukh, it was a public holiday today.
Yeah, but this is my job, right? I'm doing my job right now. Regarding Iran, Sana, I have a personal bias here as well. I'm an ethnic Baloch, and just think that what is the region adjacent to our Balochistan in Iran called? It is called Sistan wa Balochistan. So we have, divided families across the border. They are as much our people as our locals are, right? So I have this affection for Iran that goes beyond any ideology or any international ties. But apart from that also, I grew up reading the poetry of Hafiz and Sadi Shirazi. So I think that the kind of amazing depth that is there. And remember that the civilization, the South Asian civilization of Muslims actually owes a lot to various neighbors. It owes to Central Asia and Afghanistan. It owes a lot to Iran as well. For the court of Mughals kept using Persian as the official language for ages, right? Iran is one of the ancient civilizations, one of the awesome civilizations that have been there, and they are so deep, Sana, that they impact, despite the fact that they have been, for decades, they have been under tremendous sanctions, but their influence, even in the West, hasn't diminished. Their voice has always been there, right? And that is something that one has to laud, one has to, praise, because they have been very effectively championing their causes, even in the West, where it seems impossible at times because of the counter lobbying from the other sides, right? Apart from that, Iran was a country that was the first to support or recognize Pakistan. That is not all. When there were problems in our Balochistan, they helped. Their country was the first to help. And amazingly, repeatedly, they have come to our aid, and Pakistan has gone to their aid as well. And I think that regardless of geopolitics, this is the kind of bond that will endure and keeps enduring despite predictions otherwise. For example, in the war, before war on terror, in the Afghan jihad, Pakistan was clearly on one side of the divide, and Iran simultaneously was fighting, with Iraq at that time, and the side that we were on was on actually Iraq's side, and yet we never allowed the atmospherics to affect our relationship. So in coming days, I'm sure that somehow, despite all the sanctions, despite all the restrictions that are there, we will be able to navigate our way forward into better relationship. But these ideas about perceptions, misperceptions, the land of each country being used against the other, I think this is something that is purely misperception, and it will go away without a trace.
Right. Jauhar Sahab, there's also another aspect that, of course, is common to both the countries, and that's the issue of Islamophobia. And Pakistan has talked about this, of course, at an international platform and has also led this internationally. But this is, of course, something that we need some sort of commonality with other Muslim countries, also including Iran, and to sort of join our voices together to put up a fight against this. What exactly do you think are the facets of this particular cooperation that can result in something tangible for both Iran, Pakistan, and other Muslim countries, since this is another issue that both the countries face?
Yeah, that's true, very much so. Islamophobia it's there, it's real, it's important. It affects millions upon millions of Muslims in the world. And Pakistan, not only that we have sort of taken it up in international fora, we have espoused this cause for a long time, and to the extent where the United Nations, you would recall that resolution was passed, whereby a day was demarcated for a day against Islamophobia, and this was accepted by all. This was a resolution was passed in the UNGA, whereby it was accepted, recognized by the world that there's a great need to curb this Islamophobia because it's very, very counterproductive. Not only it's unfair and unjust to Muslims, but it is very unproductive and very detrimental to the concept of interfaith harmony and peace and development in the world. And Pakistan has taken up this issue in not just the UN, but in a lot many international fora. And that has translated into a recognition in very many, in the UN, as I mentioned, but also in very many countries. I remember as ambassador to Germany and Italy and other European countries, we used to face this issue. Pakistani communities there, Pakistani diasporas faced this issue, and there was consistent efforts on our part. Iran has very similar perceptions on this. Iran has espoused the cause as well over the years, and Pakistan and Iran have cooperated and they have collaborated. They have synergized their endeavors in this regard in the world fora, and that has helped. And other countries as well. It's not just Pakistan and Iran. Saudi Arabia, there are very many, Turkey, Malaysia. There's so many other countries which has espoused this cause and which have really contributed to, number one, promoting the understanding of what the issue is, and number two, sort of elaborating and articulating how it is detrimental and counterproductive for creating a global society which would sort of be focused on cooperation with the end.
I'm glad that Sana asked the question about Islamophobia, and I'm glad that you are answering that as well. I wanted to actually further ask you to help me understand. There seem to be two definitions of Islamophobia. One that is more concerning to the religiously minded people, especially the attacks on Muslim symbols and buildings, and the other one regarding the well-being of the Muslims in the West, elsewhere, wherever they are in minority. Do you think that at this moment Muslim world has a consensus on what constitutes Islamophobia?
But both are important. See, not only our diaspora, the diaspora of so many Muslim countries faces these challenges. Let me give you an example. When I was ambassador to Italy, there was a case of honor killing amongst the Pakistani diaspora there, the Pakistani community there. Now that incident, which was a crime, it was highlighted so much, it was exploited so much for political purposes by the many interest groups there, to the extent that it became the main stories in newspapers and electronic media. And I was invited in so many talk shows there, and newspaper. I did a number of newspaper interviews on that as well. So what I projected there, or what I basically clarified there, was that, look, a crime has taken place. Honor killing is a crime, and crimes take place in all communities, But you cannot stereotype. You cannot malign a whole community just because certain members of the community have committed a crime. And I recalled, I recalled that, look, when the Italian Americans went to America, in the early 20th century in huge numbers, and mid 20th century as well, Italian Americans were being maligned in America as well for honor killings, you know. So that stigma, which was again unjustifiably and wrongly, sort of, you know, like they were stigmatized for that. And I said, look, now we are being stigmatized in Italy for the same thing, and people listen to that. So that is one facet of it. And the other facet is, of course, you know, like you said, you know, so it's, I would say it's like micro and macro, one on the collective level, another on the sort of, you know, the communities level, individual communities of Muslim diasporas. But I think it's very important for Muslim countries to remove those misperceptions, you know, about the Muslim diaspora in the world, for, you know, not just
Right.
the Muslim diaspora, but the Muslims in the world, number
Right,
one.
absolutely.
Number two,
Yes. Yes, go ahead. Complete your thought.
yeah, it's very important as well. Look, you know, there's whenever people talk about discrimination in the Western societies, there have been times where you've seen civil rights movements. There've been times you know, like even this, like Black Lives Matters, for instance, you know, like there have been millions of people involved in
Right.
such movements which were against prejudice, against discrimination, against unfairness, against injustice.
Absolutely, and
So,
that
so
makes sense. Thank you very much, Jauhar Sahib. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but thank you for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Faisal, I'd love your perspective and as well with regards to how exactly do you see this visit?
Thank you, Sana. First of all, of course, if we you know, look at the bilateral relations of both of the nations, I mean, they date back to even before Pakistan came into being. Reason being, if we take the thought process of both of the nations, I mean, if we had Allama Iqbal as the poet of Muslims of subcontinent, then we had Ali Shariati, who was, of course, of the same ideology, and from Iran. Both of them, they were of the same ideology. When we talk about, you know, cultures, when we talk about our literature, they are quite similar to each other. So we are bound to be brothers, we are bound to be friends. And if we talk about this this particular visit, it has a huge importance, as Ambassador Jauhar earlier mentioned, that the security perspective is deeply looked into, of course, in this visit. Why I say this? Because both of the countries, they do face terrorism, and if BLF is conducting terrorism on Iran side, BLA is obviously active in Pakistan's Balochistan. And frankly, both of them, they are being nurtured, they are being catered in Afghanistan. And of course, we know that Afghanistan, three of the provinces of Afghanistan, they are very important when it comes to the presence of ISIS Khorasan, presence of TTP, BLA, BLF, all of them, they are there and they are being catered out there. And of course, both of the countries, Pakistan and Iran, they share this security threat. Both of them, they have to sit down and they have to, of course, look for a way out of this menace. And of course, I believe, this is my personal perception, that both of them, they are of course in talks with Afghanistan, because Afghanistan need to make sure that their land is not being used against any of the neighboring countries. And of course, Iran and Pakistan, both of them, they are neighbors of Afghanistan. When it comes to, you know, Pakistan and Iran, of course, we know quite a few months ago we had a problem, and that misconception was cleared later on. And now the when we talk about the intelligence sharing, it is being cemented. It would further improve in coming days. And of course, whatever happened in past, that is not going to be repeated in future. Both of the countries, they will be of course sharing each other's concerns. And of course, we know that in past, even if we take the example of people like Kulbhushan Jadhav, I mean, we know that Kulbhushan Jadhav always used, of course, discreetly used the land of Iran to enter in Pakistan side. We know that he has been traveling to Iran under the pseudonym of Mubarak Hussain Patel. And of course, we know that Iran, of course, if Iran at that time knew about his activities, they would have, of course, contributed towards making sure that Pakistan is being not hit by India, using their land and using their border. Of course, Jauhar was the reason that India has been using Iran's land for doing activities against Pakistan. So now, of course, we are moving on. So this is a very important visit, and I think this would further bring a positive effect on both of the countries.
Absolutely, and of course all of these issues are really important, but what I honestly really want to see in terms of cooperation between both the countries is the cinema. I think Iranian movies are
amazing cinema.
excellent, and they're just so brilliant that I think this is a great avenue that we can explore. But anyway, we're going to move on to our next segment, which takes a look at what is happening in India, and of course with regards to the elections and the campaigns of different political parties moving forward. There is of course a lot of ruckus with regards to how the Congress or the opposition alliance is moving ahead and how exactly we see the BJP or the Prime Minister speak. And most recently, of course, in an address, he has referred to the Muslim community in India, which of course is something that the Congress party has also put forward, and of course does not sit well with the Muslim community as well. But unfortunately, we've seen that there is so much suppression that is going on at the hands of the state and the party, that unfortunately it seems that this is also something that is going to be another incident in the history. Farrukh, when we take a look at the Prime Minister speaking, and of course before while the elections are going on, and before of course his supposed third term in office, what exactly does this actually what do you make of this on an international level for somebody who's taking a look at this from as an outsider's perspective, for a Prime Minister to so blatantly target a community of his own country?
Always a tone of surprise, Sana. I mean,
never actually, but
yeah, come on.
I mean,
Didn't we know who Narendra Modi is?
Yeah.
For 10 years, it seemed that our Rip Van Winkles actually went to sleep, and all of a sudden they were waking up. This is the Prime Minister when he was Chief Minister and Gujarat violence took place and Muslims were actually shunted to a ghetto. He went in front of the ghettos and called it breeding factory, human breeding factory, right? And then the other leaders have called Muslims infestation. And I'm talking about Amit Shah. So this is not new. It is Modi's MO. We always knew that behind the facade of Vikas, Sabka Vikas, Sabke Saath and all, whatever that was, behind that there lurked this extremist phase that was always there. But when people like me, after struggling against the idea of seeing him as a Prime Minister, are making peace with the idea of seeing him for another 5 years, all of a sudden the Rip Van Winkles have actually woken up. Now, amazingly, one fact that stands out right now in this campaign is that something has changed, and that is affecting Narendra Modi's perspective.
Okay.
And that actually concerned me a little bit, because people like me who have their ear to the ground, we saw that there was a slight decline in the turnout in the first phase. But from what we have heard, and I've heard quite a lot, there wasn't any earth-shaking kind of change, unless Modi knows something that we don't know. Of course, he has all kind of exit polls and whatever machines he has, he might be told. But frankly, with the kind of craven election commission in India, one would have thought that he would know that there isn't any earth-shaking thing. So what exactly is causing this, Sana? I started asking people questions, and then I was introduced to a rumor mill. I'm told that at this moment, after axing VK Singh's ticket and umpteen others, Modi is in a state of paranoia, and he thinks that there is some conspiracy that is going on. And this conspiracy, this rumor of conspiracy, and amazingly, I'm telling you the facts, and I have proof with me as well. I don't want to show it, but I can. Amazingly, the rumors have reached Modi that somehow the catechs, Yogi and RSS and other elements, the deep state, want him out before the end of elections. So there is going to be a cabinet coup, right? Because of that, he is at this moment thinking of axing another one who has always been very loyal to him. And his name is Ajit Doval. So if you are in such a state of mind that you don't want to even trust the facts that are actually manipulated by your own craven election commission. Do you know how craven the election commission is? Let me give you an example. On the election day's night, what happened was that the first turnout numbers came around 58-59%, right? After that, all of a sudden, media started saying that it is low. Then what happens? Election commission jacks up the number to 2-3%. And even then, the speculations did not stop. It kept on revising it upwards, right? And we are talking about the country with EVMs. It is not as if you have to manually count and then you get the fact. The number punched, they reach you immediately. And after that, what happened? Because there's concern that, or somebody said that because of heat wave, people might not have actually, gone to vote. Today, the election commission, while Modi is making all these statements, has taken up the issue of weather to ensure that people get some kind of cure to the weather and they can go and vote. So whose concerns are being addressed? Narendra Modi's. With that kind of a situation, if you are so paranoid, you control everything under the sun, and yet you are paranoid, then this is something that is a frightening possibility. Because people who are actually paranoid can actually do incredible harm to their own country.
Absolutely. And Faisal, when we take a look at the current situation and of course the elections in India, and while of course it seems that the results are obvious, but for the sake of argument, if we take a look at different political parties and what their stance is, especially in terms of the Hindu nationalism or the Hindutva ideology, I want to understand if any of the other parties as opposed to BJP are any better on this front. I understand this rhetoric is in their favor right now against the BJP, and they're saying this, but in terms of actually moving forward with a true a fair way of exercising the state power and making sure that people are free. Are the other parties any better in their stances?
Yes, and obviously, if we look at today's India and the election, the current election. I mean, last week, in one of the programs which we did about India's elections last week, and we kept on highlighting one thing, that this is the election that is going to decide whether India is going to remain secular in the papers or not, because this is what is being discussed right now. And today I have been going through all of the newspapers, especially few of the newspapers, they have highlighted the word secular and the importance of secularism of India in these elections. And when we talk about the other parties, of course, the 24 party coalition, that alliance is being dubbed as, of course, the only thing they want to fight for is that they don't want to see India changing itself from a secular country to, of course, a Hindu nationalist country or something like that. But they are too late, by the way, because by now, of course, India is sort of Hindustan rather than India anymore.
Not Hindustan, Bharat.
Bharat. And of course, this is taking place in today's India. And earlier I was going through the exact wordings of Modi in that speech, and he used the word "ghus baithiye." Ghus baithiye is, of course, a Hindi word which means infiltrators and intruders. He still considers Muslims as someone who are outsiders. They do not belong to Bharat anymore and India anymore, and they are the ones who actually came from elsewhere, and they don't they don't belong to this land anymore. And why he's using this, Sana, when we talk about, let me give you an example of a mechanic. A mechanic has different spanners, and he uses different spanners at different times. When none of the spanners are working, then he has a very special spanner that is called a universal spanner, and then he uses that universal spanner. BJP and Modi's politics, it has a universal spanner with them always, and that universal spanner is, you know, hate speech against the Muslims. When nothing else is working, they start going towards the, you know, hate speech against the Muslim. This shows, because there is a hatred against the Muslims within India, and they know that. Why that hatred is there? Because this hatred is actually nourished, you know, nurtured within the Indian society by BJP, by RSS, intentionally, because they know that their vote bank can be ignited anytime, and this is what they have been doing whenever they're required to do it. And now too they are doing it, because there is, why that hatred is there, because for years and years BJP and RSS, they have been of course propagating against the Muslims, that these were the Muslims who used to be ruling over us for 1,000 years, and still they have a sort of complex within themselves. They have a psychological you know, misfitness within themselves that keeps on, you know, haunting them about the Muslims, because Muslims ruled over them for 1,000 years. And by the way, them Muslims, out of them Muslims, few of the rulers, they were of course you know, the slave dynasty that actually came from Turkey, and they were the slaves of the Turkish dynasty at that time, and they ruled over India. So these are the things that actually ideologically bother this RSS and bother this BJP, and that is why they have too much hatred against the Muslims. And of course, whenever they require, they use it, and once more, of course, they are using it because they know that they are in trouble. And to me, I think it seems as if, even if BJP gets the government, it would be an extremely weak government on the very weak footings. But so far, it feels as if you know, the 24-party alliance, they are doing really well.
Regarding, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that you've given me lots of interesting things, but not the answer that I was looking for when I asked you whether, especially when we talk about Hindu nationalism and Hindutva ideology, are any other parties any better? But I'll take that to Farrukh now, and also add to that, or maybe let's rephrase it this way: if there is any political party out of the ones that we see now contesting for the elections, do you think any of them, as an analyst, that you think is good for India? Or is there none?
Sana, just a one-liner. You know, earlier, my reply actually started with, at least they are vying for the secularism. That's what the only thing good about them.
Secularism is, by the way, not on the ballot. I tell you, because that is a lost cause. Everyone knows that, and I think that after ages of other political parties importing politicians from BJP, that cause is lost. It is only a facade. It will continue to be a facade for as long as possible. But I don't know why you stopped Raja Faisal Sana. I was enjoying this zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance regarding adventures and all. But regarding, you know, and this is where you have to actually praise the opposition parties. India's main issue is not secularism. Muslims are, you know, I mean, 10%, not more than that, and negligible when it comes to overall scheme of things. They are used for a purpose, and we have addressed that earlier as well. India's problem is that it's, you know, there is an elite capture because of the casteism in India, which is deeply entrenched. The upper three castes, actually, Brahmins, the Baniyas, and you know, Kshatriyas, of course, Thakur is like my brother here. they amount to 3% each of the population. What is the rest? It is essentially Dalits, OBCs, EBCs, right? ST, SC, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. With that kind of a number, they are given some assurances in the constitution. And now, because recently Modi ji actually misfired, and he ended up talking about Abki Baar 400 Par. What happened was that there are sycophants around him, and immediately somebody said that they are going to change the constitution. Now this constitution that India has not only has the safeguards for the, for the backward classes, but it was written by somebody who was from the Dalit background, Baba Sahab Ambedkar. Because of that, the backward caste takes special pride in this constitution. If you change that, everything changes, right? So the word is that, there is stirring among the Dalits and the backward classes. Because of that, they usually, whenever it comes to Mandal report that was essentially about caste, so they counter with the Mandal, right? But the problem is there were only 3 contentious issues regarding Mandal. One, they have already conquered, that was in Ayodhya. The other one is in Banaras, a Gyanvapi, mosque. And the third one is Mathura, right? The Shahi Eidgah of Mathura. Now they have actually destroyed Babri. They can't actually go against Gyanvapi right now in the middle of elections, or for that matter. And by the way, Yogi Adityanath will not let him do it because Yogi actually boasts about his own bona fides as somebody who is policing the state and who has ensured that nobody can start violence. So they can't actually demolish either of the 2 places, Gyanvapi or for that matter Shahi Eidgah. So now it is only words that they are using. So I don't care about it.
Right.
My concern is that as long as you're talking about Narendra Modi's words, you are giving him more power, right? So right now, let him be with his own paranoia. And I think that the opposition has done a great job of bringing back focus on the common man's woes, especially with the backward classes, then poverty, then inflation and unemployment. And finally, of course, the whatever Veer Yojana there was, Shakti Veer or what Veer, Raja Faisal?
Which one?
The regarding the army induction, temporary. Right?
Agniveer.
Agniveer. So
Agniveer.
because of that, there is so much anger among the people. It is not going to go away.
Right.
So just wait and see what happens.
And very last one.
Yes.
They have actually went to the courts against BJP, especially against Modi, related to this as well.
No, but there's no point. Again,
They've done it
election
before.
commission can't do anything about it. What can it do? Stop the prime minister or sack the prime minister? As I said, secularism is only facade. Everyone knows it. So why bother?
Right. Thank you, Farrukh. Thank you, Faisal. That's all that we have time for. But we're, of course, going to be taking a look at the important stories in Pakistan and around the world in the rest of our shows. We'll now see you tomorrow.